Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Katie Swanson, and I am the founder of Oxen Labs, basically just a community to help people in the investment space figure out, what their thesis might be, where they want to invest, and how to get there. And then also network with other people who are also investing in different areas, similar areas, and just help people on their investment journey. So, with that being said, I would love to introduce Candace. She is our amazing board member right now. And she has incredible experience. When I first met her, I was like, I need her in this group. I need her to help support all of the people that I'm supporting as well, because her knowledge goes above and beyond my knowledge, especially within the areas of deal flow management and due diligence best practices. So with that, Candace, I'll let you introduce yourself and take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I'll share a couple slides real quick with you guys. You should be able to see this. So yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for having me. Thrilled to join you all. As Katie shared, I'm Candace Rezvanian, the founder of Legible VC. Today we're going to talk about deal flow, due diligence pro tips, but probably relevant. Why am I qualified to talk on this topic? Um, a little backstory. So. In finding and building Legible VC as the CEO, I really went on this mission after 10 years of experience as an investor, working across various asset classes, working with idea to growth stage pre-IPO companies, that there are a lot of aspects of venture operations, both front office and back office, that are still broken, and there's lots of room for growth. So after working in a handful of firms, being only able to positively impact one fund or one firm at a time. I'm a builder. I got frustrated and bored, and I'd fix the things. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to move on and do something else. So moving into managing consulting and launching Legible made a lot of sense, so that I could take all the practices that I've developed in a decade as an investor to roll them into a digital product suite. So I recently launched the Legible Library. It's a platform of about 30 proven playbooks to do front office, back office ops, really leaning on front office deal flow, due diligence, part of why I'm here today to talk to you guys. In my consulting journey the last few years, I've supported a number of VC firms, some of them here illustrated, but as it pertains to the topic today, in the course of my career, I've sourced and evaluated more than 20,000 startups globally across many various sectors. I've invested across nearly every vertical in the industry of venture and startup investing. And at one time in my career was managing a pipeline of about 10,000 companies in a 14-month period, while also managing 20 associates. So kind of been there, done that, as far as like building and scaling teams from scratch. I've raised multiple venture funds. My bread and butter is institutional. I've gotten really strong in the background of raising from institutional firms. I also do direct and indirect investing personally, as an advisor to many funds and of my own family. So lots of time has brought me to this point to meet with you all today and share as many gems and nuggets as I can today, and really happy to do that. With that, would love to hop into an opportunity for you guys, and thank you so far. I know, is it Callie? Is that how you pronounce your name, or did I butcher that?
Haley. It's all good.
Kaylee. Oh, okay. Kaylee. I always feel bad because people butcher my name. So sorry to do that to you, Kaylee. I already have a couple questions from Kaylee, but if you all have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the Zoom chat. Katie's going to monitor that. Hopefully some of the topics I'm covering today will address some of those, but if not, happy to break away from this presentation and address any questions. And I probably won't share my screen the whole time. I have a couple visuals if you're more of a visual learner, but we'll bounce back and forth for you guys. All right, so I have these 6 topics. These are topics we already published to you guys. If anybody wants to touch on a particular topic first, like you see these and you're like, let's cover this one now, let me know. We'll do it Jeopardy style, and I'll dive right in. So if you see a number 1 through 6 jump out at you, Katie, if you want to watch the chat box, otherwise I'll dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep my eye on the chat. I don't see any numbers popping up immediately. So maybe we can just jump in and then as it goes, then if anyone has recommendations as to what's next, then I'll keep an eye on that.
Sweet. Okay, so I'll start from the top. So, obviously, we're discussing deal flow management and due diligence. These are, two worlds that collide. Um, and there we had a couple questions already around like the efficiency of due diligence and how to carry it out effectively. Everything from, it's a top-down approach. We always talk about the funnel, like fill the funnel. But I think it's really important as any investor, if you're a fund manager at the top of the GP level or even an analyst, no matter where you are in the organization of a venture firm, is to ground yourself in fundamentals. And this is something that a lot of investors get frustrated by when I work with them. But there's a reason you come to me. Your systems are broken and you lack efficiency and effectiveness to do the job. So I have 7 critical steps that I really push investors on in order to build out their deal flow process. Step 1 is determine your deal flow process, like literally all of the stages and the steps within that. And that sounds like super rudimentary, but I've worked with hundreds of fund managers, and no kidding, less than 2% of them have a fully documented deal flow management process. Um, and I'll add to that, it's going to include which due diligence measures you're going to capture at each stage and step within your deal flow process. So I think we've all kind of seen like the typical examples floating around of like 6 stages, like new opportunity, screening, preliminary due diligence, final due diligence. You get the point. But you have to go granular for this to be really efficient and scalable, especially if you're an early stage investor, you have a lot of deal volume that you really have to churn through and prevent FOMO, like fear of missing out. The second step, and I can show you an example of this that is really helpful for a lot of fund managers I work with, is we see that yeah, document the process. That's great. But how do you document it? Not everybody is like a Word doc smith. Like they look at a Word doc and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Like, do not show me a 30-page Word document for our deal flow process. That's where I encourage, if you're more of like a list or a spreadsheet person, to move your process into a RACI matrix. So you can do it in a collaborative Google Sheet. If you're unfamiliar with RACI, it's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So literally here, you'll have every task. So that's every stage, every step in your deal process mapped out, very tactical. And then all of the team members across the top who are responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So mapping this out very literally is super powerful. Like I've helped fund managers who do 60 transactions a year double their deal flow and get 120% more deals done at the end of the year because they've actually taken the time to put together their RACI matrix and hold themselves accountable. So this is a really powerful example of how you can be more efficient in documenting that process. Third, in setting up your process, the third step is identifying the considerations for managing deal flow. So what this means is like we all have a thesis and criteria that our funds live and die by, but we don't always stick to it. We get shiny object syndrome, but beyond that, there are other considerations that impact your deal flow management, like technical specs. So maybe you eventually build your process and want to shop for a tool. Do you want it to be mobile and desktop so that you can do it on the go? Do you want the ability to have email integrations, Zapier integrations? Do you want the ability to import and export data? Do you have a lot of KPIs and metrics that you're beholden to, especially if your firm you're working with has institutional investors? Your KPIs and metrics are going to be pretty heavy. That way you're compliant with your limited partner base. So taking stock of those considerations and physically documenting, you'll notice a theme for me, documenting, creating a physical list of all of those specifications, all of those considerations when you build out your deal flow. That's really going to guide you to step 4, which is shopping for a deal flow management tool. So you'll notice we covered 3 pretty heavy things before we ever went out and bought Affinity. So everybody goes out and crowdsources, like, we're all guilty of it. We go to our friends and we're like, what are you using for this or that? Well, before you do that, take stock and figure out what's your own process. What are your own specs and considerations? Then go see what tools are out there that exist. And I am not shy. I will give a product team, like when I shop tools for clients, I will give a product team their checklist and say, if your product doesn't meet this checklist, we're not going to buy your product. And no product on the market, just so you know, will check all of your boxes. VC SaaS tools, they just aren't fully there yet, unfortunately, which is kind of comical for our industry that we invest in SaaS. But as many boxes as you can get checked as possible so that your tool can actually facilitate that process you documented. I've seen the majority of the time fund managers, they'll buy a tool and then they inject their process into it and they're like, crap, this does not work. And I spent, tens of thousands of dollars sometimes buying this tool and implementing it, and I'm stuck with it for a year. And here we are. It sucks. It's a huge pain point. People leave firms over this and get frustrated. So step 4, then shop for the deal flow tool. Step 5, this is so important. You have to identify an internal champion for that tool and implement it. So relying on your SaaS partner, if you're buying up and getting a premium tool, don't let them be lazy. Tell them that they can help you with implementation. You pay for it, you just don't know you pay for it, and hold them accountable and say, okay, this is our champion. You're going to teach our champion everything about your product, and we're going to create this playbook together, and it's going to be fully implemented and super sticky at our firm. And that will allow you to really be able to emphasize step 6 in building out your deal flow process and implementing it, which is stick to the process. It is okay to iterate, but it is not okay to deviate. I understand we all have like moments of FOMO where a deal is like closing in 48 hours and it's like the hottest A idea of the century, whatever, and you have to get the deal done. It is possible to get a deal done at a rapid pace. I have a whole process for it, but you're still not deviating, because if you're deviating, you're compromising on due diligence. You are levering up your risk, which the name of the game as a capital allocator and venture is to de-risk an opportunity as much as possible. So stick to your process. If you iterate, again, document it. Don't just do it in your mind and carry on your whimsy way. And then step 7, final step, is use your tech stack. You pay for it, you implement it. Don't just have a tech stack, actually use it. And I know this is really challenging because I think we all go through these ebbs and flows where you're like, my life is perfect right now. I'm super efficient. I'm using all the things to be better at my job. But then like you get sick or you go on vacation and then you revert back to old habits. Like building out a deal flow process, sticking to it, and implementing tools, it is a new habit that you have to commit to. So don't hold stuff hostage in your email inbox or Slack. Really commit to making sure it's all in that source of truth in your tech stack. It really does make all the difference. And again, it sounds pretty basic and rudimentary, but it is the primary pain point that I unearth in many funds that I work with. Does anybody have any questions about that before we move on? Because that's probably like one of the most drawn out pieces of today.
There aren't any questions in the chat. I do encourage you, when Candace asks for questions, feel free to just speak up. We have a smaller group today, so that we can completely do that. I also want to double click on that documentation piece, because that is something that whenever I've worked with an emerging manager, you always tell them document everything, because God forbid you anger an LP, they can go back to that documentation and say, this was an irresponsible investment. You didn't complete that documentation. So just, yeah, de-risk the risk essentially, as Candace was saying. So, just wanted to double click on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very salient point, Katie. Okay, I want to move on to a couple things that I always try to mention anytime I do a webinar, especially on this topic. Some sort of like little known compliance and security measures about effective deal flow management and due diligence. These are like easy things to avoid, things that we all should be doing, but some we just don't know about. So 5 security measures and compliance measures to follow. First is please do not discuss deals over text message. Like, just don't do it. Um, it's best to use fully encrypted solutions like a Slack or WhatsApp that's under two-factor authentication. Really, everything in your tech stack should be under 2FA authentication. It's really easy to steal phones, devices, especially if you're using Apple products. Somebody gets a hold of your cloud, you're screwed. Um, I've been in legal conversations where this has happened. So at all costs, avoid. So if you have a GP out there who is doing this, a lot of them do, please discourage that. You can do high level, but you don't want to compromise any private data for these companies that are in your pipeline. 2, I mentioned 2FA, but using an encrypted password tool like 1Password, super critical. Again, hacking happens, accounts get compromised. Like, please, please, please protect your deal flow. It's your biggest asset, and these companies are relying on you. I have been in scenarios where fund managers' platforms have been compromised and their companies have had to be informed. Imagine having a pipeline of 1,000 companies and you have to email all of those founders. It is not fun. So keep that in mind. Thirdly, store everything in the cloud. We mentioned like commit to your tech stack, store everything in the cloud, no native desktop storage. Like my computers are all wiped out every Friday. That's just like a very committed habit I have. Don't store anything natively, keep it all in the cloud under 2FA authentication protection. So you never have to worry about any private data of your firms or your companies being compromised. And then the last thing, this is a hot topic, is please avoid putting any private sensitive information into AI tools like ChatGPT. I have been working with a lot of fund managers lately who are obsessed with automating all the things and using AI. It's awesome, but we just don't know a lot. And I actually asked ChatGPT, like, hey, should I submit sensitive information to ChatGPT? And it gives you a response, and it's scary. It's like, basically, don't do this. Like, there's a lack of security, privacy. There's obviously security risks, and data retention is huge because OpenAI uses this information to shape and mold their models and their LLM. So just know that if you're putting portfolio company memos in there to be synthesized and summarized, or you're putting portfolio company updates into ChatGPT and asking them to summarize and synthesize, you are compromising the trust of that company, and you're out of compliance with your own operations of putting private data in there. Same goes for like your firm's private information. You do not want to put that into ChatGPT either. So just be really, really careful about that. I have someone I mentor at a very big organization that is currently in a legal pursuit on this very topic, and it is not fun. I'll say that. So just please avoid that. That's my hot tip there. Any questions about compliance or security before we move on?
I do have a question. So
Go for it.
So regarding the texting about deals, that's just sensitive information regarding the companies that you are either invested in or doing due diligence on. It's not necessarily your opinions or thoughts on the company and whether it would make a good investment.
Okay, it's a really good clarifier. I say don't do it at all.
Okay.
um, in that scenario, because um, think of all of the things we've seen on Twitter X of fund managers getting outed and screenshots coming out. If you, Katie, text Kaylee and say, "Oh, I think that ABC Co is just hot garbage. I heard that the founder is an egomaniac and 10 out of 10, would not invest, or 0 out of 10 would not invest. Like that could always come back to haunt you. So for that reason, just for like reputational hazard risk, avoid it. But as far as like when I mention really high level details, are like, you wouldn't say like, hey, Kaylee, we're trying to get this deal closed. Like it's, a 1 million investment on a 20 million cap. Like, where are we on this? Like, I need you to get those docs and term sheets updated, blah, blah, blah. Like that's some pretty sensitive information. Obviously want to avoid those sorts of scenarios. That's why I just default, like put the Slack app on your phone, put it behind 2FA, and just keep everything in Slack if you're a Slack organization.
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, that's a bit of a buzzkill, but if you've seen as much litigation as I have in venture capital, which is not really ever talked about because no one wants to reveal that,
Right.
yeah, it's an unfortunate lessons learned over the years. So I want to move on to some due diligence topics. So Kaylee asked about, okay, due diligence efficiency. So I'm gonna go off script here. So, all right, being efficient with due diligence, it's challenging because I'll give you a hard example. One of my clients, they have institutional LPs, and they have more than 160 due diligence points that they have to capture for every single deal. And they do, on average, 60 transactions a year. It's super high volume, and they're a team of only 4. So imagine, they have been working with me the last 2 years, and the number one point, again, super boring, but it really has come down to them documenting everything and having their process well defined. They live and die by their RACI matrix. Like every time we meet and we talk about any sort of bottlenecks or challenges, we always refer back to the RACI matrix, and I hold them accountable to it. They hold themselves accountable to it. So if you're noticing inefficiencies, I think a RACI matrix is a great aspect. But I think, Kaylee, what you talked about specifically is like the deep final due diligence of like figuring out the competitive market and landscape, et cetera. That comes down to like process efficiency, I see. So like, I don't know, like your firm and your fund, your all's thesis, but if you're an agnostic fund, it's really challenging. Yeah, because you're all over the place. Okay. You're investing in every vertical. So this comes down to a data play I see in a lot of funds is it's really challenging. This can take like a year to retroactively figure out. But if you haven't already, assuming you have a strong network, figure out who your subject matter experts are, have really strong data and tagging in whatever system you're using, if it's, an Affinity or a Deal Cloud, whatever, or if you have a CRM in addition to your deal flow tool, get really clear on the profile of your subject matter experts, and how that overlays on your pipeline. So ideally you're using the same tag. So like every AI expert aligns with the AI tag of the company, and every go-to-market expert in your network aligns with any company in your pipeline or portfolio that has that same need. The sooner you have that data library, data dictionary figured out and can overlap those data points, you can query your databases and say like, okay, we have a deal in the pipeline, they're in final due diligence, we know we need to go hard and heavy on really sussing out the competitive landscape, figuring out the market sizing, et cetera. How can we query our database to figure out who in our network can help us get this over the line? And then I go a level deeper because I'm an insane person. I have templates for everything. So I have email templates for reaching out to those subject matter experts. Like, this is the ask, this is the process, this is the timeline. I need your feedback on, this particular aspect of this company, kind of giving them a mini job description. And I've worked with a lot of funds where I have a formal onboarding process for all their subject matter experts so that they all know the playbook. They know that they don't get called on all the time, but when they do get called on, they're like, oh, okay, this is the playbook. I have like 48 hours to review these documents, give my assessment of, the market based on my domain expertise, et cetera. You asked about efficiency. Again, it boils down to data and process for me. The more repeatable you can be, the more scalable you can be, the tighter that timeline can become to really get due diligence over the line. Does that help, Kaylee?
Yeah, absolutely. And like the subject matter expert setup is awesome. I think we informally do that, but like you said, it's not tight. So it does take some time of like, I think I know a guy. I talked to someone last year who's an expert in this field, but I can't remember their email. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you, Candace.
You're welcome. And I'll drill down a little bit if anybody's having trouble with this. I worked in several firms where like the GPs are the most networked people typically at a firm and they hold their network hostage. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's intentional. And that's where I come in and I kind of like smack them around a little bit. And I'm like, listen, like you are the worst enemy of your fund right now. Like you need to trust at least one person on your team to take your network and put it into the CRM, create guardrails and measures. Like there's some great CRMs out there where you can put, sort of a black box around certain contacts. That way, at least one person on the deal team can query that network to figure out and go to Mark and say, Mark, Susie over here in your network would be perfect SME to check out this company that we really need to get the DD done on. Can I please email her? And he knows, oh, she's going to follow her scripted process over there because we have everything email templated. Sweet. All right. I want to make sure. Okay, quality. Okay. Make sure we get on some topics that kind of, if there are any other questions too, as things are coming to mind, like feel free to ping me or Katie. Happy to do that. Okay, I want to get into deal breaker questions to eliminate non-fits. So this is an answer to a question I commonly get, which is like, oh my gosh, I have deal flow and I'm overwhelmed. We're a small team, we're under resourced. Like, how the heck do we plow through all these deals but not miss out on the right ones? And that's where I have like these three primary suggestions of like, what are your deal breaker questions? This is my first question of an investor. I'm like, okay, then what are your deal breaker questions to take it from 1,000 opportunities down to 100? And the first is like, what is your thesis? Again, super simple, but if on the outset of your deal flow management process and in your due diligence, your initial due diligence and that sort of screening process, you're not quickly figuring out, does this company align with our fund thesis? Two is our investment criteria. And third is our fund model. Then this company has no business moving through the funnel. What I see more commonly is, you go to a conference, you meet a company, the founder's like awesome, you hit it off personally, professionally, all the things. Their company sounds really exciting, and you're trying to shove a square peg in a round hole where you're like, wow, this company sounds great. They don't really fit our mold. Well, then you spent all this time. Okay. You've invested all this time that's very unnecessary in this company. So I really encourage investors is like, whenever you have conversations with founders, if they come in cold or warm, inbound, outbound, whatever, very quickly, if you have an application for investment form, I really like forms. Some investors are opposed to forms because they think it like is a turnoff. But if you have a high volume firm, especially if you're agnostic and you're an early stage investor and you get 1,000+ looks a year, a form can be really great to figure out, is this company a SaaS company? Because that's all we invest in. Is this company a clean tech, ag tech, energy company? Because that's all we invest in. If not, move them to the side. Do they have product market fit? Do they have paying customers? Are they seed stage companies? If not, move them to the side. Do they even fit your fund model and strategy as far as like the target ownership or their specific check size they're seeking? A lot of those things get teased out after a second or third conversation, and that's just a huge time suck. So if it's a form or if it's you just being as bold as asking like these three questions, like thesis, criteria, fund model fit, if not, move along. I'll say too that if you're using a form, again, which I do recommend, I have templates for this just so it's not like this arduous, overbearing form, but that data you collect is so, so helpful to figure out raising fund 2, 3, 4, and so on. Because if you decide to raise a fund that is a different thesis, it validates that thesis. So like, let's say right now your fund only invests in ag tech, clean tech, energy, but then you notice like, wait, we're getting a lot of like health tech deals and a lot of fintech deals. Like startups do not read your marketing. I mean, it's just like VC 101. They'll send you anything if they fit or not. But it could be a good opportunity to see like, oh, we have another opportunity here to raise another fund and figure out like, hey, we could raise a whole fund because we have this super robust pipeline over here of all these companies that could fit another thesis. Let's see, we have a question. Another weird thing we've considered recently, is this deal out of our focus area, but so good we can't pass it up?
So-
And if so, ironing out the criteria for that.
So I was going to prompt a couple of questions to you, Candace, and this is a great example of something I was going to prompt to you, which is that, two things. One, if you're raising a venture capital fund, then in theory, what is it, 20% of your investments don't legally have to be in thesis. But is it a good idea to go outside thesis for that 20%? And if so, when is that occasion appropriate? And how do you figure that out? So this really covers that. And then the second part of that, if you're an angel investor, which I know some people here are, then why is it that you have to come up with a thesis? And of course, I'm curious as to your answer. Why do you have to come up with a thesis? And why do you have to stick to that thesis, right? Because it's your money. So you don't have LPs coming to you saying, well, this is what I'm investing in. So I want to prompt you on those two things. And of course, Kaylee's question within that first one.
Okay, cool. I made notes. All right, so yeah. FOMO is real. I talk about it a lot, like the fear of missing out, especially in the wake of like AI, like I mentioned. So the way I approach this, and I tell every fund manager, yeah, there's that carve out where you give yourself the latitude and you can kind of go off script. But just know, to Katie's point, document everything, because if that investment fails, it doesn't look good. If it wins, no one cares. Like your LP base is happy, they don't care. But if it fails, which, the odds of failure are pretty high in this high stakes game of venture investing in startups, just know that you have to be held accountable to that. And I encourage fund managers that if they want to go off script and deviate from their thesis, to at least have some sort of sense of what is the potential future outcome of this investment, as far as like, is it so far removed from our expertise that, it doesn't make sense to raise a future fund on the back of this company's potential success and this success story, then it may not make the most sense to do it. If you are deviating and investing in a company off script because, you are very good friends with very accomplished investors who are very confident in this deal, and it's like a serial founder who's already had 2 unicorn exits, then it's like, yeah, I don't think an LP base is going to blame you for taking that gamble, but just know that you have to answer for it. And that's where I always encourage fund managers to document internally, but never publicly. Like, what is the subtext here of like, we're doing this deal off script because we've done these deep reference checks and know the probability of success and the ROI potential is super high relative to, the majority of our current portfolio stake or whatever it may be. Outside of thesis. So, okay, if you're an angel investor or family office. So I worked in a family office. We were super committed. And I've worked with angel syndicate networks as well, built those syndicates out. And that's kind of the beauty of being an angel investor. It's your own money. You can do whatever you want. However, if you are angel investing with the intention of raising a fund someday, there is value in committing to a thesis and developing a thesis. And that's just if that's a goal for you. If it's not, whatever. There have been plenty of fund managers, even with some I've worked with recently, that even in these tough market conditions, they've been successful in raising agnostic funds because they're deeply networked. They have a strong reputation by virtue of being a serial founder or a successful investor, or their very agnostic angel portfolio has been successful. Just know that it's a strategy play. It's a long-term play. So if you want to go off script as an angel or family office, that's totally your prerogative. But if your long-term vision is to raise a private fund from LPs, you have to be able to tell them, like, this is why I'm an expert. This is why I'm going to succeed at this. I've already made 15 ag tech investments. I know this space up and down. Look at my portfolio and track record performance. Did I cover it all? I think I did.
Yeah, no, you did a great job, I believe. And so this is something we had discussed a little bit before. I'd be interested in being able to share the response with some people, but we don't have to go down too deep into it. So along the lines of, as an angel investor, you know, you have your thesis if you want to raise a fund. My kind of advice to angel investors is create a thesis to make it if you're jumping into angel investing, right? Create a thesis so it's less overwhelming, and so that it is easier to start that due diligence and kind of jump into, well, this is an area of my expertise. Now, what if an angel investor comes across an investment that is outside their area of expertise and it is technically not something they know anything about? Should they just bring in an expert on that area, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So,
High level.
no. So there's like three things is I'm always a fan of playing to your strengths, like invest within your scope and your domain expertise. It's just like so much easier to like vet and validate. And if you ever get a line of questioning, like, hey, I'm an expert. Two is I say hire for your gaps. So this can come into like adding to your team, but if you don't have the operating capital to do that, or if you're an angel investor and you're like clearly just a solo actor, is there are plenty of subject matter experts for hire out there. And I know a gentleman, he's like a health tech expert, and this is his full-time job. He just does health tech technical due diligence for VCs and private equity firms, full-time. And those people exist, and the good ones have a playbook. They can give you like a range rate of like, do you need initial due diligence or do you need like deep final due diligence on this company? If so, this is relatively how much it will cost. And then the third point, kind of back to what we were talking to earlier with Kaylee, is using a subject matter expert or an agency. Especially, there's a lot of these outsourced development shops now for like technical development. You can rely on them, all sorts of experts. They'll have typically like hourly or flat fees to help you with due diligence if it's not within your domain. But again, know that the expectation is to get a very detailed report from these individuals and an investment recommendation. I have like a comprehensive due diligence checklist, and I provide the technical specs breakdown to providers for my clients. I'm like, these are the 5 questions you must answer or you're not getting paid, and I need your investment recommendation. And and I also get the double opt-in from the company. Like, don't hire a provider to do due diligence if you don't have the double opt-in from the company to make sure there's no potential conflict of interest, et cetera, et cetera. Just know that that's like a really good, like, customer service centric performance there.
Great, thank you. One question on that. Sorry to be hijacking
Yeah,
this. Um,
as long as it's helpful, I'll keep answering them.
so when you do the double opt-in or hire somebody to do that external due diligence, venture capitalists don't tend to sign NDAs. Is there an expectation that this expert also does not sign an NDA?
Yeah, great question. So what I've typically seen, it's not NDAs, but it's like in the contractual agreement, there's like a confidentiality clause. That's what you'll typically see. And there's like boilerplate language that your attorney can provide you, or some of these good like providers that already do this, they can have boilerplate like templated contracts that spells out like, hey, anything you share with me, I won't share. It's all kept confidential, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, perfect. You can go on
Yeah.
to the next one now.
Yeah. Um, okay, I think something super important while we have some time left is, what due diligence do I ask for and when? That's like a super common question I ask for and kind of plays into efficiency measures. So I'll show you some examples here. So back to the point of documenting your deal flow management and due diligence process, what you're seeing on the left is like a glimpse of legibles like comprehensive due diligence checklist. You can see an example here for like the new opportunity stage. These are typical things that most fund managers, like especially institutionals I work with, will ask their prospective pipeline companies to complete like on an investment form. So pretty typical stuff. But again, make sure that whatever questions you are asking can help them get out of your pipeline faster. And I don't mean that to be harsh. It's just like the majority of the companies that enter your pipeline, you're never going to do those deals. Okay. And the quicker you can get to a no, the better. So what is your thesis, your criteria? What's your fund model strategy? Ask questions around that to dictate what sort of parameters that you can attack to really get them out of your pipeline faster. What you're looking at on the right, one of my clients, they're the ones that do 60 transactions a year. We believe in transparency. It's actually a very big part of my personal ethos as a fund manager. I don't believe in holding your deal process and your due diligence hostage. I believe in being transparent with founders. It's a really good relationship building mechanism. So this document is public on their website. Any founder, any investor can download this document, and it covers the bases of typically what they're going to ask for. They ask for more, but this is a very good starting point so that you can see as a founder what this investor expects from you and at what point in their due diligence and deal flow process. So they start out with an application. It defines here the parameters. They are location specific. They only invest in companies in Kentucky. So again, thesis, criteria, and fund strategy. If you're not in Kentucky, bye. You're not in the pipeline anymore. So examples like that are really fitting. It spells out here what they're going to ask for at the screening stage, preliminary due diligence, final due diligence. Final due diligence is where they're really digging in. I feel like a lot of fund managers, they spend time kind of spreading all of their due diligence questions out over the whole process, but I like to bucket them and provide them to founders where it makes sense. Some founders get really overwhelmed and they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to ask me for 100 things. Like, this is just too much. But I always encourage you to be transparent. And if they want the full checklist, like just send them the checklist. Like, we're going to ask for your financials. We're going to ask for your business plan. We're going to ask for resumes and bios and all of these things. So if they're a proactive and productive founder and they have like a really badass deal room, hopefully all this is already in there, but if not, they know to put it in their deal room. It makes your job a lot easier. So these are recommendations of, in this particular client's case, but again, I have like an institutional grade due diligence checklist of what I recommend asking for and when during your deal flow and due diligence process so that you can be really effective and efficient. And again, like making it known so that your founders are never surprised. And the really good ones, like I said, they'll get you all of this information really readily if you make it available. Any questions about that? No? All right, sweet. We're doing okay on time. We have like 7 minutes. I just want to be cognizant of that. So, all right. I think an important one I'll cover, we'll probably end with this one, is like the 5 red flags that are commonly ignored by fund managers. And this one is, I get this a lot because we all want to be good at our job. We want to make sure that we do the right deals. They're done well, they're well diligenced. And there's a whole litany. Like my guide to executing due diligence, really comprehensive. These are like the top 5 that I pull out based on the mistakes that I see a lot of fund managers make. So the first one is really overlooking technical debt. Technical debt is huge, but something that we're seeing shrink, hopefully, in the wake of like AI for development and things like that. But what I mean, it's not necessarily like physical money debt. It's you're looking at these early stage companies with like really early MVPs, and they've made decisions that are like using duct tape or bubble gum to like get the product to market, get like that early demonstration of product market fit, get customer feedback, etc. But then you look into the tech and the development of it, especially if you're not a technical investor. I think again, my materials, that it gives you at least the questions to ask if you're a non-technical investor, to figure out like, do they have some technical debt issues here that I would want to look into, that kind of like make my skin crawl or perk up to me. And it's, have they developed, um, have they raised funds on the premise of developing one product, and then they kind of deviated and learned that they had to rebuild that product? So then they've spent all this money on all this infrastructure, and they go to sell to enterprise customers, and they realize that their data architecture and infrastructure cannot support those customers. So then they have to re-architect the product and kind of go back to square one. And then they're coming to you as an investor, and they're asking you to pay for that. It's like we all see like the pie chart, like use of funds, like 60% for, tech and development. And if you really dig into like that slice of the pie and learn like, oh crap, like they're kind of going back to square one here. They've like built on it, an outdated platform, or, their AWS usage is like out the wazoo. Really digging into their technical debt and how they've developed the product is going to give you a lot of insight to determine how far does your check go in this company. Are they based in reality, or are they being, not so conservative in how they're going to spend your $1 million check as they build out the platform? So technical debt's a big one. Second is really unrealistic projections. If you're not like a deep financial mind, which I'm not, I typically outsource financial due diligence. Early stage investors, you don't have to do a lot of deep financial due diligence, but nonetheless, whenever companies are forecasting, especially early stage companies, and they're saying like, yeah, we're going to hit like 500K RR by the end of the year, and you're like, wait a second, you just started raising, like Q3 is like a handful of months away, and you're only at like 20K in AR. Like, how's that even possible? Like, do you have some magical sales wizard I need to know about? So I think really challenging them on, how they're forecasting, and are they being very realistic in those details, is super important. And, do they have a very realistic timeline for those, for the raise, and like how that translates into the other aspects of the business? So like, say they're raising, $3 million, and they're going to achieve these lofty goals by Q3. Well, if you back into it and you've ever run a company before, you're like, wait a second, they've got to get the money in the bank from the investors. They've got to build out a recruiting process. They have to hire the team. They have to onboard the team. Then they have to scale up their ops. Then they'll hit their revenue target. Like, is all of that going to happen in 3 months? No. Again, they must have a magical wizard I don't know about. So unrealistic projections are a huge one to consider. Third, poor market research. I think we see the companies in our pipeline who say like, yeah, we all see like the table, like these are our 3 competitors, and the check or the X of like what they do versus what we do, and we do all these things and they don't do any of these things, and this is what makes us wonderful. That can get really exciting, but that's where I really pivot into digging into like, do they know their customer? Are they like wholly committed and married to their customer? Like, I'm an investor and I'm important, but the most important person in your life is your customer. Like, do you really know them? And 2 is like, how long before your competition stomps you out? Like, if they don't have that self-awareness to know like, and be honest and realistic of like, yeah, somebody can come along and stomp us out tomorrow. Like, you don't want to hear that as an investor, but you also want them to be grounded in reality. And always perform your own market research. Don't just rely on PitchBook. This is gonna sound bad, but PitchBook just doesn't have the best data. I'm sorry, they really don't. It's pretty flawed. So just know that you can't just rely on PitchBook data to do that market research. Moving on, another red flag I see a lot of fund managers avoid or miss is just inadequate market fit. Again, we all see like the TAM, the SAM, all of that. It gets really exciting, but I want to hear that a founder has done, hundreds of customer discovery interviews and they can wholly spell out, my customer's a 35-year-old millennial mom who goes to Starbucks every morning and has a disposable income of 180K a year or whatever. Like, the more specific, the better. When I hear that companies have done that really deep customer discovery, I am more likely to lean in and understand that they have a good market fit and not just rely on some litany of data that's out there that's reported on their market. Last is a lack of transparency. So this takes time to build rapport with founders, but if they're giving like vague responses, they lack responsiveness, they're not very timely, they're kind of evasive, skittish, or they provide information reluctantly, my experience is they typically do have something to hide. And again, that's kind of tough to establish, but I think it's really, really important to identify on the outset and know that transparency really does lead to the best outcomes. I know we're like right on the line. Does anybody have any other questions before we wrap it up? All right, sweet.
I want to say,
Katie?
yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. Definitely incredibly useful to myself, and I'm sure everyone else. And I will. I know you still have a couple more things to talk about, but I'll be sending an email out to everybody who registered, and of course anyone who attended, with a recording of this. And you're more than welcome to email any questions you have back to that. And I can make sure you get an answer from myself and Candace. So now is not your last chance, but so feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to be of service. And if you have questions after, feel free to reach out. Happy to do that. I'll drop a link in the chat and then I'll just give you some visibility here. It doesn't want to enter. There we go. Haha. I'll share with you really quick. I sent you a link. So I've talked about a lot of examples today and, things that I've developed to kind of like take the guesswork out of this for a lot of fund managers. Is I have a comprehensive library, the Legible library, that has all 30 of my playbooks, but just for y'all, I pulled out only the deal flow and due diligence pieces. And you guys can visit that link, scan this QR code. It's going to send you the same landing page for the investment process and due diligence bundle. It's going to have all of the proven playbooks, processes, etc., already provided to you. And you also get a free hour of consulting with me. So if you review all these materials and you're like, okay, I want to implement these, how do I go about it? You can tap onto me. Right now for the next week, I'll make it available to you guys for 75% off. So $511. What a fun number, right? It's valued at over like $2,000. But happy to make that available to you all just to make your lives easier. I believe in making your lives easier because it's tough to be a fund manager and investor. So if you all have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for the time. Really exciting to do this and have really, really enjoyed spending the time with you all today.
Awesome. Like I said, thank you so much. And that link will also be included in the email that I send out. So if you didn't get a chance to copy it or QR code it, scan it, I guess is the proper term, then it will be sent to you.
Great. Thank you all so much. Thanks for spending time with us today. Hope you have a great rest of your week.
Yes, and thank you, Candace. Everyone have a good one.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate
Bye.
it. Bye.
Bye.